Okay, so this video is about rest, self-care, and work. So if you're doing this part of EFC course, this is the theme of the week, and you'll get a worksheet with different experiments on for you to try. As ever, pick those that are appropriate to your health, your life, your lifestyle, your commitments, but do pick some. Yeah. Alrighty, so critical to life. Work is one of the driving forces in our life. You know, Freud, it said health was the ability to work and love. So you know, one of the two big things in life, right? Along with kids, relationship, romance. Working from passion, working from purpose to me has been super, super critical in my own life. I've done a whole series called Purpose Black Belt on that. You can look up those videos if you're interested. And there's also sort of a dark side to that. There's a difficult side in that I tend to overwork. And I think this is not just me. I think this is, well, I know, having worked with many people around the Western world, this is a condition of the modern world, Asia too actually, of overworking to the point of self-abuse, to the point of exhaustion, to the point of ill health, often to the point of destroyed relationships. Lots of consequences to this. Some people it's underwork, not so many. Most people it's overwork. Tends to be the thing that people need is a bit more rest and a bit more self-care. So with this, it's not about policing yourself for a week. It's about awareness. It's about mindfulness of your patterns of work and not work. So the experiments are things like this. Take an extra day off. No excuse, no explanation. Take a long weekend. Yeah, that's an experiment you could do. Equally, you could work an extra day. You could work 6 days in a week rather than 7, and notice what that does to you. Notice if you get resentful, for example, maybe you really enjoy it. I quite like working 6 days a week sometimes, but I have a job where my work's very varied and there's a real sense of purpose to it. Yeah. Another thing you can do as an experiment is notice your relationship to money during this week, as work and money are pretty connected. Things like do a day's work for free. That could be really interesting. Or try charging a client twice as much as you normally charge. So work week is also in some ways like money mindfulness. We'll probably do that at another time, but these two connect. Notice if stories come up for you, like I'm only a good person if I work. I've worked with a number of guys who, when they retire, feel like they're pointless, particularly men, feel like they're purposeless, like I'm only have value if I work, in the same way as women are objectified as success objects. Men particularly, though women too, are often objectified as success objects. So does work and mean that you have meaning as a human being? Do you still have equal value if you are laying down all day? Have a sleep in. There's another practice. What happens when you lie in bed and you're lying there and you're not doing anything? Maybe you're awake for a bit, but you're kind of lounging around. Is there this sense of guilt or this voice in your head, this fear? Is your work fear-driven? I know in my company, the first few years, I was like, got to get up, got to make some money, got to pay the rent. You know, if you're self-employed, that can be a pattern. When you rest, really notice your process. Yeah? Really notice your process. Like, do I really rest? Some people are active in their rest. Okay, like doing nothing. Now I'm meditating. No, that's still doing something. Yeah, so noticing what you do when you rest. Is it real rest? And you could also just look at your diary. Do you tend to fill it up? I tend to do that. Do you allocate time for rest? Do you value that rest? Is the rest the first thing to go when something comes up, which it always will? Yeah. Other experiments about work and rest. Take a lunch break if you don't normally have one. Take an hour. Take 2 hours. Be Italian. Okay, this can relate to some of the food stuff like stopping for lunch. Or you could work through lunch. Again, by disrupting the normal patterns that you have, you become aware of some of the tendencies around these patterns. Simple one for this week, and I put this as a challenge to everyone, get enough sleep. Okay, so for 1 week, get the sleep that you actually need. So for most people, that's about 8 hours. Do not kid yourself. You can survive off less, but it's not optimal. Some good books on this just come out. Even for 5 days, ensure, no matter what it takes, that you get that 8 hours. It might be 7 hours for you. It's rarely less. Some people it's 9. My wife's about 9. You know you've had enough sleep because you wake up before your alarm clock. Okay, and not in terror or anxiety, just waking up naturally, happily, like when you're on holiday. It's another good test is on your, if you go for a 2-week holiday, and if you haven't noticed that, if you've never had a 2-week holiday, on the 2nd week of the holiday, notice how much you sleep for. Yeah, so for me, I might sleep a lot the first few days of a holiday just because I'm catching up, right? And notice if that happens at the weekend, you're catching up. And then after a while, I start to settle on about 7 to 8 hours sleep. So that's really what I need, 8 hours to be safe, 7 hours if I'm not not pushing myself too much physically or mentally. Okay, you can do a spa day as well. That's one of my favorite things, getting a bit camp now, is spa days. Some very good spas if you can afford it. If not, you can do a self-spa at home. So this is one aspect of self-care, you know, the bubble baths with the oils and the nice music and the scented candles. That's not all of what self-care is, and this has been pointed out recently in some very good articles. Self-care is also about boundaries. It's also about not overworking yourself. Generally, we're overcommitting. It's a linguistic pattern. We're overcommitting to things because there's some emotional driver, like can't feel myself, yeah, or have no value unless I overwork. So actually, self-care is a bit deeper than this, but you can try getting a massage, the bubble baths, you know, do that. It might be being really social, right? It might be for you, self-care involves, you're an extrovert, involves, you know, having a social life. So try some of those things this week and see what they do. And equally, you could try not doing them. It's quite interesting. If I've been in situations where I've only had a cold shower instead of a hot bath, and it's like for a few days it really exposes like how dependent I was on that hot bath every night, which is my sort of general routine after a day's work. So at home I have a bubble bath pretty much every night for about an hour. Yeah, some people are surprised by that, but that's the yin that I need for my yang. And when I'm abroad, sometimes I've only got a cold shower, and it's like it really exposes how dependent upon that I am. So diversifying your self-care can be helpful, particularly if there's some change, uncertainty in your life. So EFC students, you'll find more practices on the handout, more potential experiments. The key thing here is to bring awareness to what's going on, to bring awareness to your whole process of work and rest, the things that are driving that, and of course the embodied qualities of really resting or really working, being active in that. The yin and the yang, the cycles model we've looked at is very helpful for looking at this. How do you get stuck in the cycles? Is there an element you particularly work in, for example, as well? Are you centered when you work? Is all your work off-centered? You can use the models we've used. But the main thing here is awareness around work, rest, and self-care for a week without judging yourself. Do some experiments, reveal some patterns, and report that back to your small group if you're on EFC.